All right, so this is a great time to report on what's gone on in the week. Share your victories and defeats, or whatever. It's the time to ask questions. It's the time to um, share quandaries around this whole topic of rest. We dealt with two great questions last week, posture and pain. That could be something to check in about if anybody was working with that this week. Pain is another thing that it really activates the what's wrong, really activates something's wrong, makes it hard to rest. It also really humiliates the doer who wants to have a solution for everything. Everything ought to just have a doctor somewhere that knows what to do about it. I haven't found that to be the case.
Mark, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about confronting other people's doers and other people's what's wrongers when, maybe you are sitting and doing nothing and then, coming in many ways, like you're talking about our internal ones, but there's also external ones. And just
Yeah, there are.
curious.
Yeah. So can you say a little more about that, about your experience of external doers impinging on you? Some details might help me to know what to say about that.
Yeah, I don't have a specific example. It's just more maybe you're sitting with a person in a room and, you're just at two different levels of wanting, to do something or, yeah, and that kind of conflict.
Yeah. Well, you can speak what's on your mind and heart in some way. I mean, I can imagine a situation where there's so much doing going on that people don't really connect. There's a kind of a loneliness, maybe, that's going on in a relationship where it's all about doing. Um, you know, and life can be very busy. So if one person wants to rest and the other wants to do, what do? You can invite them into rest. Sometimes you'll have to hear their fears about resting. Oh, I have so much to do, and so just sit here and tell me what you feel is weighing on you. That could be a possible solution. It's just, bring what's weighing on you right here. Um, I often appreciate if somebody does that for me, listens to me, um, talk about my burdens, talk about something that's weighing on me, and it allows me to kind of settle and regulate my own system. So that occurs to me to say about that. Um, but what's wrong? Um, sometimes it works to present a different point of view to someone. Rather than seeing it as wrong, this is how I look at it. More accepting of the smudge on the wall, or whatever the equivalent of it is. Um, Oftentimes people come at us with their kind of critical side. And so the what's wrong very easily kind of gets joined up with criticism. Maybe you haven't taken care of this, something's wrong, you haven't taken care of it. So anyway, those are just things that occur to me. If there's a specific scenario, then I think I might have more to say. It's,
Hi, Mark. um, your instructions about is like through the meditation is right to a place of not wanting to be or actually not being. And I have been experimenting a lot about that. Is try to kind of dissolve the being, like a strict person, and but
dissolve.
I
Okay,
have
just make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, Catalina. So it's the person that you're dissolving, right? Is that what you said?
yeah, is the Catalina, like the Catalina that it have to be this way and it had been
Yeah.
conditioned to be this way. So
Yes,
I'm
yes.
breaking with the meditation and with my work. I'm breaking all these boundaries and all these um, boxes that I have to be this and I'm this and this and this. Like so in a way, like yeah. But even when I'm doing like I think I'm being successful, the being come very strong in a sense, for instance, of doing walking meditation and then suddenly see something so beautiful that kind of aches. And but then I realize is because I will like to be something like this, like this
Um,
being will like to, like is an desire to be something as
right. You create
beautiful.
a sense of self in that moment as you're touched by the beauty of a flower or something. Something else arises in you that feels like you have to become something. You have to,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes. And even like during that 1 month of meditation, I I I I I, I saw myself um trying to be a person, like
Mhm.
and so it's like wow, this is so strong. The need to be a self is so painfully strong, even like if you're consciously and even that you are just a product of the conditions, so is any ideas from you?
I think you're doing the most essential thing, which is notice it.
Hmm.
What I would maybe add is I sense a little bit of reactivity in you to noticing it.
Yeah,
Like you don't want it there.
yeah,
You're being a bad Buddhist.
right.
It's always dangerous to not want to be a bad Buddhist. See if you can relax that, your aversion to noticing it. It's just a mental function.
Hmm.
It's just something that happens in the mind. If you give it more power than it has to have when you react against it. So all you actually really need to do is notice, oh, the mind wants to become something. It feels like I've got to be
Yes.
this, you know? And just in the moment of seeing it for what it is, let that be sufficient. If you try to oppose it anyway, who's trying to oppose it? The good Buddhist is trying to oppose it. So you're creating another, and you're just getting stuck. Um, so that's the place to kind of peel off is the reactivity around what you notice your mind is doing, creating an identity. Minds create identities. Wise people don't get stuck in them. But minds are always trying to create identities and labels and what the way the world should be. And that's just part of what they do. And just noticing that is sufficient. When you're noticing it, you're not grabbing a hold of it. Danger of hanging out with these Buddhists. You start getting a Buddhist ego. The calmer than thou kind of thing. So, yeah, just see it. Laugh at it. I mean, you just laughed. It reminded me of how the power of laughter, um, not ridicule kind of laughter, but just the, oh, how ridiculous kind of thing that when we see ourselves, um, remember very early on, I guess maybe the second retreat I did, I kept catching myself in these fantasies of like, it was, I imagined Joseph Goldstein happened to be the person who was leading this retreat. And it actually wasn't a retreat, it was a kind of a self retreat, but he was somehow kind of the one who was sitting there and leading it back in those days, way back in the early 80s. And I kept having this fantasy of that Joseph Goldstein was going to give me a medal for being the most improved meditator. And it was compelling. I would be kind of lost in this kind of fantasy, and then I'd wake up from it and I'd just like laugh. Oh my goodness, this is ridiculous. Something in me just really wanted to somehow be honored. I think in those days I didn't quite have the inner skill to honor myself. You know, I needed it from somebody else. I needed it from some older male was going to give me the nod somehow, and I needed that. But yeah, something and very sweet in me, like just wanted acknowledgement. Oh, I'm trying really hard here. Could somebody just give me a medal? And so laughter, humor is really helpful for watching the mind.
Thank you.
You're welcome. By the way, I'll be handing out grades at the end of the term. You'll all be A meditators. So let's see, Sarah, and then Wynn, I think.
Oh, I didn't. If someone else was before me, that's okay.
I didn't actually look to see who popped up there first. And why don't you go, Sarah? And then there's
okay. I just had a quick observation of just this week being curious about rest and noticing how much my phone is disrupting my like intuition and inner knowing of like I'm tired. And how like I've known this isn't like wow the first time I've ever realized that my phone is wasting my time, but like I think it's been interesting because I work with younger people and I see them not able to like break the trance of the phone, and I'm like, oh, crazy kids, they should put their phones down. And then it's like 11:55 and I'm in my bed with the lights out looking at my phone and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm so tired. So I think there's, like reading an article in bed, like, what am I doing? So I think that there's just this, how can I like, and I can laugh at that. Like it's so absurd, but I'm like doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And so I just wonder, like, there's the noticing and acting otherwise when I know it's my best interest continues to be, sometimes it goes all right, but sometimes it's still really a challenge. And I just wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
I think it's helpful to acknowledge the phone is an addictive device. There's real addiction going on there. And so all the things we associate with addiction are part of it. The mind justifies using it and thinks it, can't get along without it, and just the whole stuff. So maybe to rest, you need to set the phone down. And you could develop some rules around that, really. At what time of night should the phone be just like plugged in and turned off? You can decide. I don't know your life or that, in those details, but I really would encourage that, some rules around the phone, and of like, when do you not carry it? when do you not pay any attention to it? Turn it upside down so you can't see the lights flashing, and turn the sound off. Just create some limits around it. It's unfortunate when addictive substances are also things we depend on. Like food. Food can be an addictive substance. So the phone is like that. We can't just have total abstinence. Oh, sometimes I wonder what life would be like without a cell phone. Go back to that world. I miss it. So that's my suggestion, Sarah, is really develop some rules around it. And maybe if it would help you, check in with us. How well that went to put the phone down. That's the advantage of these groups. Once you say something in the group, then you can be held accountable. All right.
Thank
Good.
you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's see when you can spin there.
So I need some help because I actually started thinking about it, your instructions to do nothing, and I had no idea what you're talking about, because when I really equate, or what I equate with doing nothing is shutting off different things. Like, if I go for a bike ride, I'm off the phone, or if I meditate, I'm resting in a certain way. But I might turn on ESPN or read a book, or things that I sort of equate with doing nothing. But honestly, I have no idea what you're even talking about when you say do nothing.
All right. So
what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Like riding a bike, it checks a box, the exercise box, and enjoyment box, or watching TV. It check those are meditating even kind of checks it. So the doer is usually okay with that. What about just sitting in your chair and taking in what's around you and what's inside you, even for 5 minutes? This might drive you nuts to do it longer, but I would give you an example. First thing I do in the morning is go outside and sip my tea. I sit in a chair, even if it's freezing, as it was this morning. And it's dark. I go out there in the dark, often bundled up. I just sit and look at the sky, look at the horizon. And the only intention I have is to not think about much, which is pretty easy when you've just woken up and you haven't had your tea yet. It's just not to think, just to be, to breathe, to feel the cold air on my face, my nostrils, to see the quality of the light, the stars. Maybe my mind will think a little bit about the stars and how amazing it is that we can see so far, see light coming from so far. It's like I just sit there. So that's really what I'm saying about doing nothing, is just sit there. Or rather than going for a walk where there's a sense of a course you're going to complete and it's going to be exercise, amble. Go for an amble where you just kind of walk around the yard and take things in. Or go to a little trailhead, even if you need that. That might be easier for some people, but then that becomes a hike, or it becomes, I'm out in nature, and that counts for something in my doer book. So that's where a saunter through the yard usually doesn't register with the doer very much. Trying to think what else. Laying in bed, kind of waking up slowly, is a possibility, or laying in bed, not trying to fall asleep right away, not stopping yourself from falling, but just kind of being there. And people do that quite naturally. I think of other kinds of doing nothing. We could really perfect this. I'm kidding. You can't really perfect it. So are there any moments when you can just be? like here I am in my office. If I wasn't on the screen with, 25 or 30 people looking at me, I could just take this in. I have my Oaxacan rug that I love. And why not just actually appreciate it? The colors are amazing. The pattern, everything about it, I like. Why not just take a moment to appreciate it? Or one of my plants. A couple of them are a little sad, I have to say, but there's some that are very happy. I have my shrine. I have certain objects that call to mind the sacred. So this is also a possibility, because I really think that, being can also be putting yourself in the space of what's sacred to you, what really matters. So I have a Buddha Rupa, a Buddha statue. Currently, in his arms, he has a picture of me at 6 years old, which for some reason I really am enjoying seeing there. It's sort of like I'm in the lap of the Buddha. And it reminds me of who I was at 6 years old, who I actually think was someone I aspire to be in many ways. There's a picture next to it it's a woodcut thing that Rebecca Bradshaw gave me of a monk. It comes from Burma. And so it's a gift from a friend, and it's also reminds me of Buddhism. There's a shock of wheat, which reminds me of where I grew up, on a farm, a wheat farm. There's a special tree with a beam of sunlight coming through. There's a birch bark letter from a friend of mine that I put there. Who writes letters on birch bark? Well, he does. It's kind of cool. And so, and there's turkey feathers. There's things there that matter to me. They represent things to me that really matter. And so I sometimes just spend a little time with them in my heart. And sometimes I do that at the end of my meditation. I open my eyes and there it is. And I just kind of take it in. It's like food. I could turn that into a practice and then it would be doing. But I don't do it all the time. It hasn't yet taken that flavor from me. It seems much more spontaneous and like, just like I want to take it in. I look at the turkey feathers. I don't know if you ever do this, but I like to find feathers and smell them. Oftentimes the scent of the bird is still in the feather, which you find out in the wild. And there's no reason, there's no purpose to that. There's no use to it, except I love the fact I can get something of the essence of the bird just by smelling the feather that has hopefully recently come off their body. If it's been off too long, they don't always have a smell. So that's my little discourse on how to waste time. Not really waste time, I'm kidding.
Thank you.
How to just be.
Yeah.
Right. So everybody, have a good week. Have a good Thanksgiving. I almost forgot that Thanksgiving is happening. Have a good Gratefulness Day, and I'll see you next week.